Hey everyone, I'm Chris Oos.
I'm Isaiah Aos, and this is the Aos-to-Aos podcast.
We got an exciting show for you today. We're going to be talking about failure, and more specifically, failure as a entrepreneur. I hope you guys enjoy the content.
Hope you guys enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, how's it going? We're back with another podcast. Today we're talking about dealing with failure as an entrepreneur or just dealing with failure in general. Most of these tips will be able to go into different areas of your life. It can be sports, relationships, it can be anything. But we want to specifically talk about entrepreneurship because that's kind of what our channel is about. So our first little topic here is actually listening to people who have been successful. Most of them, all of them actually, will have failures in their past that actually help them to get where they are. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Pretty much any successful person, any successful business person or motivational speaker, one of the big parts of their story is failure. You look at David Goggins, he had more failure than most people out there, and he just kind of used those failures as something to build on. Every time he would fail, he would build more and more on that, and that's where he got most of his successes from. Another example is, in the E-Myth, and actually, you know what? The 4-Hour Work Week. That's one I was recently listening to, and he tells a story in there about a guy who just totally failed at life, and had issue after issue and failed marriage, all that kind of stuff. And in the end, he reveals that it was him, a very successful person now, very successful motivational speaker, worldwide operations. So yeah, failure is a big part of success.
Right. Yeah. So I have here a list of basically the failures of a man that lived a long time ago, and I'm sure you know who he is, but I'll read off the failures and then I'll let you know who he is. So in 1832, this guy lost his job and then was defeated for state legislator, failed in business in 1833. 1835, his sweetheart died. I think it was his fiance or wife. 1836, he had a nervous breakdown. 1838, he was defeated for Speaker of the House. 1834, he was defeated for nomination for Congress. Eventually, he actually did become a congressman. And then 1848, he lost renomination. 1849, he was rejected for land officer. 1854, defeated in U.S. Senate. 1856, defeated for nomination for vice president. 1858, he was defeated for U.S. Senate one more time, and then finally in 1860, he was elected President of the United States, and that was Abraham Lincoln, who we're talking about. One of the most famous presidents, in history, failed that many times. And if you look at people's stories and things like that, many of them will have more failures, less failures. It's not the amount of failures you have, it's how you deal with those failures, and if you keep pushing and if you keep working towards your goals.
Absolutely. That's a great story. That's a great example.
Hello?
Most of us don't have that kind of drive, but to just keep getting up failure after failure. It's something that you really have to develop, and you have to. I think it's kind of how we've talked. You have to have that end in mind, what your end goal is, and as long as you can keep your end goal in mind, you can get through those failures and build on them and get past them.
Yeah, I accidentally muted you for a second, so there might be a little bit of me talking over you for a minute, but we're good now. So, yeah, totally. You got to work past your failures. We're going to get to that in a minute. Actually, right now, it's get over it is my next tip. Nobody likes to fail. That's the thing. It's like people think that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they failed and they were okay with it. No one's okay with it. In fact, I would think entrepreneurs are less okay with it because unsuccessful people will fail and then either tell themselves that it's okay and they'll go sit on their couch and eat potato chips and stuff like that. But successful people use that failure or fear of failure to get themselves to the next level. For example, they'll think, an unsuccessful person will be like, I'm so afraid of failing, I'm not going to start. A successful person will say, I'm so afraid of failing, I'm going to work extra hard. Mm-hmm. That's basically the difference between a successful and non-successful person.
Absolutely.
So, and then, failure is basically, I think it's interesting to also remember that failure is in the past. Like once you fail, as long as you're not going through it, like you're going, bankruptcy, blah, 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 it's in the past. You can get over it basically immediately. You just have to learn from it, forget about it, and move on. You have to continue with your life and continue with your journey, whatever that is. Like Abraham Lincoln, he was defeated so many times. If he quit, many people probably wouldn't blame him for it because he tried really, really hard. But in 1860, that's the year that made the difference. You can have 10 years of failure and 1 year of success, and people think you're an overnight success, but that's not really what happens.
Mm-hmm. And I think his story is a great example because not only did he make it president, but I think if you kind of look at his story and see all the different paths he took, like the land officer and the vice president and, Congress and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he went at it at so many different directions and eventually, he became president. But I mean, it wasn't like a straight path. It wasn't like he said, okay, I have to become a congressman and vice president and president, a lot of the times we get it in our minds that there's only one set path. Well, Abraham Lincoln's a great example of how, he got there, but it wasn't the conventional path, but he made it work.
Right. Yeah. No, there's a lot of paths you can take to success. And I mean, not like right now I'm actually getting my, real estate license. We're doing this company and things like that. I'm just doing a whole bunch of stuff. I'm trying to stay focused on the things I want to do, but I am working on a bunch of different stuff, and it's not necessarily like you have to be a real estate agent or you have to be a businessman or you have to, do this or that. You can move around a little bit. Life is very open in that way that you can do a bunch of stuff and still succeed at one or two or three things. I think Elon Musk is a good example of that. He made Tesla, SpaceX, The Boring Company, Zip2, PayPal. He made all of those things and was successful basically at most of them. 1 second. All right. All right, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, kind of got put off by your sneeze, but that's all right.
Good. All right. All right, so the next tip is to reevaluate. So figure out where you went wrong and where you have to do differently next time. Oh my God, 1 second. All right.
I don't think I'm going to edit that out.
Okay. All right. So figure out where you went wrong and where you have to do differently next time. You might have to fire people. You might have to rethink some contracts, and you might even have to look in the mirror and realize that you're the problem yourself. You don't necessarily have to stop being an entrepreneur, but if you look in the mirror and you say, you're the problem, you spent all the profits, you did this, you did that, you might have to change those before you're able to get into business again. You might have to take a few years off and really work on your character and yourself before you can move on if you really want to be successful.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this in the past about, phrasing and rephrasing and reframing your self-talk, talking to yourself. I mean, a lot of times, we sabotage ourselves, and sometimes we just have to be brutally honest with ourselves, with YouTube. I mean, if you're out there and you're trying to make your YouTube channel work and you're trying to build it and trying to get to the point of monetization and stuff like that, but you're being inconsistent and you're only uploading once a month, or some months you're uploading 4 times and other months you're uploading once, you're not going to, be as successful as you want. So sometimes you got to be brutally honest with yourself and say, hey, if I don't upload once a week on a consistent basis, I'm not going to be successful. So, those are kind of things that you can tell yourself, and that kind of self-talk that you can tell yourself that's not necessarily negative, but it's honest, and it's, framing it in a way that, is going to motivate you to be more successful.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah. Our next kind of builds off that one too. It's starting again. So after you reevaluate and you identify the problems either with a specific business, or maybe the business was the problem, you're the problem, whatever it is, you want to try again. Not necessarily at the same business if you don't want to. Like if a business failed because of the business, don't beat the dead horse. You know what I mean? It's that kind of is a failure that you might not want to pick up unless you think it will work. Then go ahead and do that. But if you think it'll work, it was just a employees or yourself or contracts that you had or something along the lines of that, try again. I want to think of an example of a company that, failed and failed and tried again. Do you have any?
I don't have a specific one, but I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that started as one thing and ended up migrating into another thing. That's, I guess, something else when you're starting over. Yes, you have your end goal in mind, but sometimes you have to, kind of reevaluate what that end goal is if it didn't work the first time. So, a company like, I'm having a hard time coming up with anything, but let's talk about, like my personal experiences. I have my other podcast, and my other podcast, I enjoy doing it, but it's hard to come up with content for that. So, for the last couple of weeks, I haven't posted anything, haven't uploaded anything, because I'm trying to reevaluate that and find out, what works for me, what I'm passionate about, what I can, make long lasting. I mean, like certain subjects you can only talk so much about, and then it gets, it gets to the point where it's oversaturated. You can't really talk about, same subjects over and over and over again and expect people to keep coming back to your channel. So right now I'm in a process right now of, I haven't quit that channel, but I've paused so that I can reevaluate and try and find a new path.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if that's what you have to do, you got to do it. Yeah, and I mean, if you think about something like Heinz made baby food back in the day, but that's not what they're known for. They're known for their condiments.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So Heinz had to really evaluate that their baby food was not the way that they wanted to go, and actually go into the condiment business and just switch up their whole business model and potentially lose a bunch of money in order to do that. What the fuck? All right. Yeah, and if you need to, like I said, start over. If you fail at real estate because you're not into it, doesn't mean you can't succeed at, starting a franchise or, starting a podcast or whatever it is. Doesn't mean because you fail at one thing because you weren't into it or because, it's just not for you, doesn't mean you can't succeed at something else. Just like the example of the Abraham Lincoln. He failed in business and became the president. You know what I mean? Like the top, like by today's standards, that's the top job you could have in the entire world, is being the president. And he failed at business, not necessarily because he wasn't a hard worker or a passionate, good person, but because that wasn't his role. That wasn't what he was meant to be. He was meant to be the president of the United States, which is what he was. So that's another thing too, is that you might not be into the thing that you're into, but you can still be successful in life.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, we're not saying that you can't succeed in a lot of things. I mean, if you look at companies like Yamaha and Kodak and big companies like that, these are companies that, are known for a specific thing. I mean, Yamaha, I mean, you think of, musical instruments, depending on what industry you're in, but, musical instruments or motorcycles, but they make TVs, they make excavators, they make all different kinds of things, so I mean, you can succeed having a broader focus. Kodak, another example, they make, they're known for film and for cameras and stuff like that. Well, as things have progressed and we're into digital cameras and things like that, they've also progressed. I mean, they make tablets and TVs and things like that. So I mean, you can succeed on a broader scale, but it's less common. So, it's, less likely that you can succeed when you have such a broad focus. So, just another example.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think our last thing, and then we can share anything that we want to, that we've kind of thought about, but be persistent. Be persistent in the actions that you take. Back to the Abraham Lincoln example that we kind of started with. If he gave up after that first failure, he would have never became the president of the United States. Literally, he started at 1835, I believe it was, and went all the way till 1860. That's when he became the president of the United States. 25 years of consistently just hustling and grinding it out. 25 years. That's longer than I have been alive for. About half as long as you've been alive for, Dad. But like grinding that long, could you like, and then not having a success basically at all during the entire process, that would suck completely. And many people would give up. But the people who are truly successful in business and in life in general are the people who don't give up, and they spend 25 years grinding and don't have a single win until they have that one big win that ends up paying off for them in the long run.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what separates, people from entrepreneurs. I mean, we've talked about this, that entrepreneur isn't necessarily a person, it's more of a mindset. Having that entrepreneurial mindset is what separates you from, someone who just, has an idea. That entrepreneurial mindset is what, gets you out there and grinding and keeping focused and building on your failures and building on your successes and things like that, and getting, building a real business. I mean, you look at people like Elon Musk. I mean, he is the true example of an entrepreneur. He comes up with all these big ideas that, people would think are impossible. I mean, who would have thought, 20 years ago that a private company would be delivering, materials to the International Space Station? I mean, someone would have looked at you and said you're crazy. But, Elon Musk looked at that as an opportunity. Okay, we can do this better than the government can. So, he built SpaceX. Right now he's working on, a tunnel system in Las Vegas. I mean, he's building a big, tunnel system where his vehicles are going to transport people underneath Las Vegas to the convention center and stuff like that. I mean, like this guy he's amazing when it comes to, the example of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I mean, if you read his book, you'll know that basically everyone doubted him in every aspect. PayPal, Tesla Motors, SpaceX. Even now, like with Neuralink, I don't know if you've ever heard of Neuralink, but what Neuralink is basically a chip that you're going to put in your head, and it's going to have wires that go into your brain, and it's going to fix things like Alzheimer's, epilepsy, things like that, by basically triggering the neurons that aren't firing to fire, and then that will basically fix the disease. And it's going to basically just keep going from there to where he thinks that we'll be able to communicate through just thought and things like that, which is really cool. And many people think that's not going to happen, or that it's dumb or whatever. But if you look at Elon Musk's track record, I believe it's going to happen, and I believe that he's going to be able to succeed at that, and even getting people to Mars, which is another thing that he's trying to do. I think he's going to succeed at that personally.
Yeah, I mean, when you just stated that, I've never heard that one, but when you just talked about that, I mean, I think it's kind of crazy. But then like the progression is, I mean, yeah, he's done everything he set out to do. Right. This is it kind of. You kind of just think, okay, well, if he set out to do it, I mean, obviously he's put a lot of thought into this, and no one would believe that, his electric cars would be so popular, and no one would have believed that, we would have went, into space with him or go to Mars. But I mean, he's accomplished everything he's put his mind to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think he's going to accomplish a lot more in the future. But this is not an Elon Musk video. We just wanted to talk about that real quick. But yeah, I think we can probably wrap up here.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the content.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Go ahead and leave a like down below, subscribe, and leave a comment of any future videos. And then really quick, I want to shout out also Ginny Diana, Triple M, Midlife Crisis, Mixed Music, and then the Life Hackers. Those are all different platforms that we have on our kind of multi-channel media, and also partner multi-channel media and things like that. So go check those out. We'll try to put the links down below for those so you can go check them out. But we have some interesting content and some entertaining content on that too.
Absolutely. Make sure to hit that bell icon so you're notified when we upload new videos. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Have a good day.